Hello, hello. Welcome to Coder Radio. Today's a little bit of a special. It is my somewhat late because I took the time to actually look at everything. WWDC 25. Quick take. So not going to be super long, but I'm going to go through some of the more interesting things that Apple announced, as well as a little bit of context behind it. If you are a fervent Apple hater, well, there will be another episode out in a few days. So, that'll be the regular format, not totally Apple focused. So there you go. All right, let's go right down the list because I want this to be quick because I'm sure you guys have been inundated with the dub stuff. So on-device AI with the Foundation Models API. Sure, I guess I'm skeptical. Subsequent to WWDC, Apple has announced that they may start using Anthropic or ChatGPT for Siri. That is a rumor, I should say. That may or may not happen. I don't know. I'm not super bullish on Apple's AI stuff, which is ironic because the A series and M series chips are pretty good for it, as like chips regular people would buy go, meaning like not NVIDIA GPUs, right? But this just seems like an area where they're struggling. I do think their emphasis on privacy is a bit of what is hanging them up. They talk quite a bit about their private cloud. For developers, this may be convenient to use if you are, let's say, specifically an indie iOS developer, because then you don't have to necessarily set up your own ChatGPT developer account or something like that. But there's a lot of questions here, and we're just going to have to see how that goes. So next big thing, I'm just going to hit this one right off the bat here. The liquid glass design standard. There's been so much digital ink spilled. So I guess lots of the new Apple commentators aren't super old, because I do remember when Apple went all candy stripe on macOS, and they did what they tend to do and pulled back. I think this is going to be quite the same. I don't think it's really worth going into. It's a new visual design. It seems weird now. We went through this with iOS 7. They're going to pull back. They're going to balance it out. In fact, if you've downloaded the most recent beta, today is June 30th. So, just for context, right? If you've downloaded the most recent beta, they have done some stuff to make like the bars a little less translucent, a little easier to deal with content. And that is just how Apple does this, right? They love to do dramatic design overhauls on stage and then slowly pull back to something that is more usable. Honestly, it does remind me of Windows Vista's Aero design language. I know I'm carbon dating myself here, but I don't know. I think it's fine. I don't care. If you're an indie dev and you don't want to do your own crazy custom design, get used to it, right? There's a bunch of new SwiftUI APIs for it. I think it's fine. I think it's all going to suss out just okay. So jumping back to our AI stuff, Xcode's got built-in AI. Claude, Llama, ChatGPT powered assistant, supports local models, fine. I did not get to do too much with this. It seems fine. I mean, if you've used like a Cursor or a Copilot in VS Code, all these AI coding things are hit or miss, right? Sometimes they're great. Sometimes they're questionable, let's say. It's nice to have this in Xcode. I'm sure for folks who spend their entire day, like I used to years and years ago in Xcode, probably jealously looking over your shoulder at like the VS Code people, wondering, damn, how come I don't have that? So good. I'd like to see maybe Apple do a little bit of love towards specifically SwiftUI stuff, because I do think a large part, maybe I'm again applying my own old iOS experience here, but a large part of Apple development is visual development. It is visual development is maybe wrong for UX development, right? It is getting those pixel perfect, beautiful designs. And that's, SwiftUI is moving relatively quickly and UI is hard. That's kind of where I would want the help, right? Coming from the boring guy who mostly does enterprise software these days. So take it for what it's worth. Again, I do feel like being Xcode, it's going to lag behind, let's say, a very highly motivated editor like Cursor, right? Who I think I've said on the previous show to this one is not so subtly fighting for survival against the onslaught of VS Code and Copilot. So platform and app level features. I don't have much on this because it's very consumery. I will say that iOS 26 seems to be adding a little bit more background multitasking functionality for iPad, which could be very, very cool. I like it. I like the new menu bar on iPad. I know I'm very focused on iPad. One of my hobby horses that anyone listening to the show for a while will know is the iPad is, I think, the Star Trek tablet that we should have had that is unnecessarily held behind by Apple's silly policies. I didn't have enough time in a week or 2 weeks rather to go through, and develop like a large scale complicated iPad app. I did play around with it some. I think it's good. I think it's a step in the right direction. Time will tell how liberal Apple is with their policies, right? Because there's always that question of what you can do and what Craig Federighi will let you do. But I'm optimistic. I think they've gotten the message. I know it's kind of like hipper to be a little negative, but clearly with the new style preview app, the new menu bar stuff, the much better multitasking and backgrounding stuff in iPad, again, better relative from where it was. I think they've gotten the message. But then for more details, there's always the Workflow Labs are free to attend. And in fact, I think if you go to the Apple developer site, or if you're on like a Mac or an iOS device, go to the developer app, you can just watch them recorded because obviously they already happened. So your mileage may vary, right? It's going to be one of those things. Do I think that this is an improvement? Yes, I do. Right? I'm repeating myself, but I certainly do. Is it possible that, when someone submits a complicated enterprise level iPad app, that Apple rejects it for like stupid pricing and billing and policy reasons? Yeah, it sure seems possible, doesn't it? It's a little scary, but which I was going to save this for last, but brings me to kind of the dark robed elephant in the room here. So Apple lost the in-app purchase court cases, but they are pretty aggressively shouting from the rooftops that they intend to appeal, baby. I think that's both very important and like not important. If you're an indie, I don't know that you want to implement your own payment flows, even though it's never been easier. But I do see all this payment stuff, and we've covered it to death. We just had Paul from Rogue Amoeba on. We talked about it quite a bit as kind of 30% is a lot, but also kind of a proxy for Apple's control over the platform. I would prefer, and I know this is unrealistic because number need to go up on chart, but I would prefer that they kind of just be a gentleman about this and say, fair enough, I'll cooperate. I understand that we're Uncle Tim to do that. There might be negative stock price ramifications. We're doing that publicly. So they're going to fight. It does breed uncertainty. I hate it. I kind of hate that this legal policy in-app purchase, just like the question of what level of control does Apple maintain over its platforms, particular iOS in particular on the iPad, was like the specter at the feast that should have been WWDC. But, they have their incentives. They are, if not the largest, one of the largest publicly traded companies in the world. And they're not the plucky guys in the garage anymore. They're, in fact, I think I can go on a limb here. The plucky Steves in the garage would have considered modern Apple to be the evil empire that they felt IBM was. So, yeah, that's, spicy. Spicy. So, a few other things here. I want to focus on like where you can maximize your value, right? And it's tough. Apple made a big fuss about this LLM stuff, running it locally, blah, 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 built into Xcode, knock yourself out. I don't know, right? I keep being of two minds on this generative AI stuff for coding. I am loving it for like modifying unit tests and integration tests because that's a pretty defined problem, and most of that work is tedious. But when it has to do complicated UI with animations to the level of, you're trying to win an Apple Design Award, that sure seems like a lot to ask. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to be wrong. I mean, this is one of those things that this technology is, unless you believe the folks who say we've peaked, which I don't. This technology is evolving rapidly. So this may age like milk, but I think it disproportionately got attention in terms of minutes of the show versus what it should have. And again, the reason for that is number go up on the chart because the stock market needs them to have a quote AI story. And I'm kind of guilty of this too, right? If you look at any of my LinkedIn advertising for any of my stuff, I tend to try to link it to AI somehow. And sometimes it is, right? Because Alice does integrate with ChatGPT, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so specific SwiftUI stuff, it's almost all around this new design language. I like the custom scroll transitions. This is a weird, stupid pet peeve of mine. I thought SwiftUI kind of didn't give you enough control of that. Again, I'm old. I miss UI scroll view. It's fine. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you don't need to know. It's old. Don't worry about it. Great. I don't think, and then this is a spicy take, like sriracha spicy, that if you were going file new project in Xcode, at least if I were, I would probably just go pure SwiftUI at this point and not fuss around with like integrating UI kit, storyboards, any of that. I know that's a feel you screaming, some of you out there, but I think it's there. I really do think it's there. The Swift language, because we have to ruin everything, has custom macros now. Oh, dear God. So SwiftUI already has macros like Codable, Builder, Lens. I think there was one called State Object that I think is being replaced by something called Observable. I could be wrong. Again, I didn't spend tons of time on this. I hate the idea of allowing custom macros because I tend to inherit lots of projects from that have been how can I say this nicely? Foobar. And this is the kind of thing that annoys the crap out of me. I know it is not technically the same thing, but I can give you an example from Rails, which I think a lot more folks listening will be familiar with. Monkey patching. Don't do it. It's bad because your stupid custom implementation might make a lot of sense to you, but I kind of expect, Array to work the way Array should work. That's just me. Not exactly the same thing with these Swift macros. Still kind of hate it. We'll see. Maybe I'm overreacting. I will say the @Codable stuff, the macros that Apple built in are actually pretty good. They've been there for a long time. They work fine. This, by the way, is Swift language version 6. Another big win for those of you who, I guess, are spoiled, in my opinion. I'm half teasing you. Better async await support. Yeah, you should thank your local .NET dev because they came up with all that stuff. I don't know if you guys remember, if you're old enough to remember Grand Central Dispatch from Snow Leopard. We used to do it with C blocks, baby. That's how you do it. That's how you do your asynchronous API calls. Now you just have async await, and they've cleaned it up. Again, not a huge change, but certainly cleaner looking code, easier to reason about, less unexpected behavior. There were a few weird edge cases that I'm not super sure are relevant for this conversation, but it's more predictable now. And I would actually argue it kind of behaves in the way like .NET async await behaves, which is the right way. So, tallyho.net. Swift Data version 2. This is spicy. The reason it's spicy is because I think this is the beginning of putting in a stake in the demon, in the vampiric heart that is core data. If you don't know what core data is, just be happy. You won. You are winning at life. You don't need to feel this pain. I love it. They've got some fancy cloud sync stuff for conflict resolution. That's because core data and now Swift data allow you to sync the data to iCloud because Apple wants that extra storage money. Great. Sure. Custom serialization support, very important. You have custom data structures. Yeah, one of the problems with the previous implementation of this. It's not going to replace your super complicated core data implementation just yet, but God, is it a step in the right direction, and just faster we can kill core data, just better. I say this like half tongue in cheek, but those core data implementations get so nasty. I guess for our graybeards here, I'm sure some of you older folks have written some kind of wild NS predicate calls, right? So it's a core data is a technology that made sense and had its time, and I think Swift data is a cleaner implementation, a more modern implementation, that as it becomes much like Swift UI is to UIKit, right? Once it becomes more robust, will be a good replacement for new projects. They've got a bunch of privacy APIs. Okay, sure. Permission aware, yeah. There's all kinds of like talk a lot about like AI, but ethical. They've got don't get me wrong, privacy is important, but from an indie developer or even like someone like me doing line of business apps for enterprises, I'm not sure that you're not going to sell a contract on like you're using the app privacy stuff. It doesn't matter. So bottom line, this actually, I feel like this WWDC was actually pretty good for devs, particularly small devs with some of the Swift UI improvements. And it is a bit of a shame that it was overshadowed by Apple's just crazy intransigence on this billing and policy stuff. And there is the big question of, okay, you've loosened up on the iPad, at least API wise, or what does that mean policy wise? Right. I kind of wish they would just have done, even if after, because they want to do their glitzy show, right? Even if after the show, just come out and say, yeah, you can assume that you can do any of your power user professional apps on the iPad, and we're not going to be picayune or nitpick on, oh well, you're doing too much in the background. But no, these are powerful devices. People treat them like laptops. They keep them for, I think the life cycle is like 5 years, which is pretty long. So maybe the iPad Mini, because it's mostly for kids, is less. But I'm thinking iPad Air, iPad Pro. They're substantial devices. I mean, maybe the one other thing I would have liked is a relaxation of the enterprise distribution stuff that they locked down a few years ago because of the sideloading. Since they now have to allow sideloading anyway, at least in the EU, why not just go back to the old way? Because I don't like using MDMs because they're all bad. But if you are an MDM person who wants to sponsor a show and tell me yours isn't bad, you can do that. So that's it. That's my WWDC take. What do you guys think? Hit me up in the Discord. The Discord is just called Coda Radio. There is a link in the show notes. If you are looking for a job, I know there's been lots of layoffs, or indeed if you are hiring, because I know also many of you are starting new firms or are, frankly, just looking for good developers. There is the Help Wanted channel in there. I know some people were doing some gaming. The last couple of days I haven't been in there too much because I've been swamped with a large project deployment deadline. But there's all kinds of stuff going on in there. I will be complaining about the new Final Fantasy Power Creep set for Magic the Gathering because I think it's terrible. And yeah, so I'll see you again in a few days. Bye, Z's.